Hello, hello. Welcome once again to another episode here on XY Spark. I'm your boy, Rolando. And once again, we have a special guest who has joined us here on the platform, who continues to join us and share in this passion, this vision that promotes holistic, healthy masculinity. We have Tom Gentry with us. Tom, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Rolando. I appreciate it.
Guys, let me tell you, I'm pretty excited to have Tom. I reached out to Tom. We were both in a room together on Clubhouse. I saw Tom. I say, hey, this guy looks like he has a story. Tom has an amazing story that he's going to be sharing with us. Listen to me, guys. Fasten your seatbelts because we're going to have a beautiful interview today. So Tom, before we get into it, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and who is Tom Gentry?
Before we get into it, well, that's a big setup right there. We're gonna have to live up to that. So I am a certified addictions counselor and an internationally certified alcohol and drug counselor living and working in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I grew up in Indiana and found my way here 25 years ago when my family sent me to a residential treatment facility, which was a Hazelden facility, to address my alcoholism at 23 years old.
Wow. Wow.
So that's sort of where my path of personal development began.
Tom, it sounds so interesting. You said that you are now working in drugs, addictions, counseling, and recovery. But then at 23, your family sent you off for treatment. Tell us a little bit about your journey. What led you there? What was the main thing that drove you to that place to got you into alcohol use?
Well, there are a lot of factors. I mean, in hindsight, looking at it, it would have been practically impossible for me to not develop an alcohol problem. The way and I said that because although I come from a great, loving family, was lots of drinking, especially the men. It was more taboo for the women to drink, but the guy, it was completely acceptable for you to come home drunk 3 or 4 nights a week, Wow. And there was always alcohol present. Anytime there was any celebration, any holiday, any occasion, there was always a lot of drinking going on. And I think also I'm the youngest of 8 children, and with 2 very older brothers. And so my dad was 48 when I was born and working really hard to raise a family of 8 still. So I had a little bit of an unmet need of attention from my dad. And so as a child, even, I really wanted to feel connected to the men in my life. And I recognized very early on that the way to get that done would be to drink.
Wow. Wow. Tom, that is so deep. Tom, and you are probably familiar with what I'm about to say, but isn't this something that we hear come up a lot when we were working with men, that they were always seeking that connection with their dads?
A lot. And it's funny, I have a 15-year-old son. So who's he's only known me as a sober man, but I've had pretty frank conversations with him over the years. He's I have a interesting career where I've done a lot of work, and I've run small residential facilities where he's been there, and met the guys, and like long-term care guys who are living in a place I'm running for months,
Yeah.
and one of the things I pointed out to him is that all of those guys almost invariably have wished they had more of a connection with their dads, and just about every case, they were dads who wanted to provide their kids with a better life than they had. So they were out working their butts off all the time at the expense of their relationships with their sons.
Mm.
So they had the money,
Mm-hmm.
they gave their kids the stuff, the things,
Mm-hmm.
good schools, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But these are all guys who were just aching to feel more connected with their dad, and as a little kid, all we want is our parents. It's all we want.
Yes.
And so it was a really good lesson for me to learn
Mm-hmm.
prior to becoming a parent, because it since my son was born, I have always chosen jobs that afforded me more time with him instead of more money to spend on him.
Wow. 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 That's such a deep thing, Tom, because, as we talk about healthy masculinity, there are some societal norms that has been handed down to us as men that I don't want to say we don't have any choice, but by way of default, we fall in line with that at the
Yes.
sacrifice of a lot of other things,
Yeah.
relationships. So as you talk about, being in connection with men who are seeking to take their life back from substances and stuff, what are some of you mentioned one, having that need for that, but are there any other common threads that you've seen that has really impacted men?
Well, the thing that I really had a clear understanding of as someone who was nearly drank myself to death was that I wasn't living the life that I wanted to live. I was living in active codependency probably as early as I can remember. I was I was esteemed by others rather than self. I needed their approval. Because I didn't have that attention, I wanted that attention, I sought their attention, I went out of my way to keep it. So I wasn't gonna decide to take the career path that they would not approve of, or what, because I didn't want to risk that loss. And if I had not had a deficiency in self-esteem,
Mm.
I would have been able to say, I understand you're afraid that if I write, I won't be able to make a living. I'm going to do it anyway. But
Mm.
instead, what I said is, they said, well, you could get a trade. People always need plumbers or electricians, and I ended up becoming a carpenter. That's what I did.
Mhm.
I I mean, I love working with my hands and all that, but I wasn't born to be a carpenter.
Mm.
That's not who I am. That's
Mm.
not what's written on my heart, you know?
Mm. Mhm.
And so I really betrayed myself. I really betrayed myself. And so what I see as my bottom, my sort of the escalation of my alcoholism to the point where I had to be stopped, it was an existential crisis.
Mm.
I I was miserable. The psychic pain that I was in, and I was self-medicating. That's what I was doing.
Mhm.
Oh, and there's spiritual aspects of it too, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
But um I, you know, we have to be who we are. Recovery is about being congruent. What I say, what I do, what I want, all those things, consistency, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Matching.
Wow.
And if I can be a great guy and have a great job, but if I'm not doing what I want to do, I'm betraying myself.
Wow. Wow.
Some level that hurts. That's a loss. And
Mm,
so, and so the very least we have to do to be healthy is to recognize that and experience that pain, you
mm,
know?
mm.
Um, I mean, that's what I have come to learn, you know?
Wow. Wow. Tom, you went off at 23. That's a pretty young age, 23. How did, because what I've heard, Tom, is there are a lot of guys who at first when they ended up in a treatment facility, they struggle. They're like, I don't belong here. I don't have a problem, you know.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
was that something that you struggled with? And when did you sort of like accept it that, hey, you know what, I need to do this, and you move from there to where you are now? That's a huge shift. Tell
never
me
went
about
back.
tell me
Never.
about that change. What happened?
Oh man, what happened? Well, I just hurt so bad, you know. Part of it was, I mean, I'm not the only alcoholic in my family. So I had a sister who, God rest her soul, died a few years ago. And she was an alcoholic. And I watched her as a child because she's much older than me, you know. So I watched her in her alcoholism. And then as I entered adolescence, early adulthood, then I drank with her, you know.
Hmm.
And she had severe liver damage. I mean, she had to stop drinking or she was going to die. And so she lived here. She'd married a guy and they moved down here for a job of his. And um, she was, you know, trying to get her liver treated and had a doctor who said, I can't do anything for you until you stop drinking. You're going to treatment. And he sent her to what was a Hazelden facility that was here for about 25 years, that facility. And now it's changed hands. But she went there in 1995. And I saw, first of all, such a profound change in her. I could never imagine her being sober and staying sober. And here she was a year later, happy, coming to me, seeing what I'm doing to myself, wanting me to have the gift that she received. And what probably helped me most with her is that I could see how happy she was. And she told me, this is so much better. You can really be happy. You don't think you can, but you can really be happy. And I saw it in her. So I believed her. I did. So there was that. But, I mean, at the end of the day, I could go into the gory details, but I could not stop drinking. I tried every way I could think of, including an intensive outpatient program in my hometown. And I didn't understand that I couldn't do it by myself. I had to get to the point where I recognized I was really powerless and I needed help. I needed to listen to other people. And then, I got there and was in a frame of mind where I was going to listen to what they had to say. And they started to help me see how everything that was going on up here wasn't as good as I thought it was. Because I used to think just because I thought something, that's the way it was, and,
Mhm.
um, and, you know, um, they helped me realize how full of BS I was,
Mm.
you
Mhm.
know, the,
Mhm.
the, the narrative that I was using for myself, I mean, I just, and they also helped me see how dysfunctional the atmosphere was that I was living in, and just how the severity of the whole situation, and how I just, like, by the time I finished 28 days of treatment, I felt a lot better. I had a clear understanding of the disease, and of a much better understanding of myself, enough to know it would be ridiculous for me to try to go back there and survive. It just wouldn't work.
Mm. Mm.
Probably.
Wow. Tom, I'm so glad I have a guy like you on the program today because it's International Men's Day.
I did know that.
eh?
Yes, it is.
And your journey, as I'm listening to you, your journey, it has been it's been decorated with several different things, from coming out of an alcoholic home, seeing siblings who are alcoholic, going off and doing your own treatment, coming to grips with the reality of the fact that something needs to change if I'm going to be different, to now where you are today, where you have worked with so many men. You're presently in that role where you are supporting men every single day. And I want you to tell me a little bit now about the work that you're doing. You finished treatment. What encouraged you now to shift from, okay, I'm finished treatment? How did you get into this work?
Well, it happens a lot. I mean, that it happens a lot. Um, First, I want to go back and say the other thing that was happening, especially given that it's International Men's Day, the other thing that was happening is I was trying to transition from boyhood into manhood. And
Mm,
I didn't have people to help me through that who understood what was happening.
mm,
I,
mhm,
I had I had males who were to a greater or lesser degree unhealthy. Some of them toxic, some
mm,
of them just depressed or whatever, but they weren't emotionally aware.
mhm,
They and they didn't see what I needed, you know. And I didn't know what I needed. I was a kid, you know.
mm,
Uh, but how the transition took place is initially, even when I was in treatment, um, there were some of the guys saying, yeah, you need to be a counselor, you know,
mm,
like, which I thought, how seriously are you going to take that? But I made a mental note.
mhm,
And then, so from residential treatment, I went to a halfway house
mm,
where I lived for 15 months. The first 9 months of those as a client, and the last 6 as a resident manager. So it was, at the time, it was an opportunity that I saw. It was an opportunity for me to um, dip my toe in the water, try the work, also continue to live in a structured environment where I was going to be held accountable. They drug tested me too. Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, and just to see how it would go. And then and it was one of those things. It was me at 24 years old, the only staff member on the premises, with 33 guys in 4 or 5 buildings. At the height of the crack cocaine problem, So, there were guys coming home high that I had, they couldn't stay. I had to put them out. Like it was, and it was really intense. There were a lot of good things about it, but one of the best things about that experience for me was that I began to recognize, because I had a support system of guys who basically said 6 months into a year commitment for this job, you need to quit. You need to quit your job. Like, this is wearing on, you're not who you were before. This is wearing on you. And so it was an opportunity for me to, of course we want to keep our commitments, but to exercise some discernment, having gotten support from my support system, and make a decision in the interest of my well-being, which was, I'm not going to be a martyr. I want to live, it's okay. It's okay to change your mind.
Yeah.
It's okay to do the best you can and then recognize I could keep going, but this might kill me,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was really good because it was my first experience working in that sort of environment. And it really drove home the idea that you got to take care of yourself emotionally. You have to have boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
You have to come first. Your own well-being has to come first. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Tom, now I want you to be careful now about what you just said, because there is a psychology, if I can use that expression, that's in the community now for many men, where it's my responsibility to take care of my family. They come first. My kids come first. My wife come first. My parents come first. My job. Now you're saying that you are supposed to come first. Now, and why I'm asking that, Tom, is healthy masculinity. How does that fit into this conversation? Are you saying, what are you really saying? Because you said something there that a lot of men may hear that and think, what is this guy? Is this guy crazy? What is he saying?
Well, I think the bigger concept that's operative here is that, trying to live in a black and white reality doesn't work. We need to live in the gray area of life if we're really going to be functional human beings. And so, yes, it's great to be of service. And yes, as a father, my job is to raise my son, and his needs need to come before mine. His survival. That's my mission in life.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can't function at high enough level to do that properly,
Mm-hmm.
I'm good to him.
Mm.
Right? So if I, and to oversimplify it, is if I'm not treating my alcoholism, if I'm not going to meetings, and then I'm a dry drunk, I'm emotionally unbalanced. And then that, it's the idea that if we don't heal our wounds, we bleed all over the people we love.
Wow.
If I'm not in a good place emotionally,
Wow.
I'm going to take it out on the people who I love. It's just going to happen.
Wow.
It all has to come out somehow. And it's either going to come out in a healthy way or it's not.
That's loaded, Tom. I like that. I like that analogy, because it's important for us to help more men to understand that if you start working here, it goes out like ripples. But if you're not working here, what are you going to be
Right.
distributing?
Well, if the better I am, the more I can help.
Yeah.
The more good I can do.
Yeah.
The more energy I have, the more vitality I have. It's but we live in a culture where these concepts are oversimplified.
Mm,
right? Like my
mhm.
family's got to come first. And I think there's nobility in that. There's honor in that, right? But, there are also an awful lot of people out there who would much rather take care of someone else than look at themselves.
Mhm. Mhm.
They'd rather be distracted by what can I do for you so I don't have to face my insecurity or my deficiencies or whatever, because
Yeah.
it's painful to look in the mirror and actually do the work. It hurts. So a
Yeah.
lot of people would rather pretend they don't need to and help you instead and wear this cape like I'm gonna be Superman
Yeah.
to do everything, and that's my false identity. That's a
Mhm.
false identity is what that
Mhm.
is.
Mhm. Mhm. It is. And Tom, man, I could talk to you all day, but I don't want to make this laborious. You said some really powerful things today. And I wanted to ask you for those men who may still be maybe struggling with some of the things that you talk about, what would you say is some solutions then? What advice would you sort of give to some of those men who may be struggling, to have that balance, to, practice healthy masculinity, to break away from codependency, like what you said earlier, to place more value on themselves, to have more compassion? What would you say to those men, Tom?
Well, I think first of all, from a addiction recovery standpoint, the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous changed the course of my life.
Mm.
And they gave me a spiritual framework in which to function and gave
Mhm.
me some direction in life. And also built into that, I had good men around me, older men who could mentor me and walk me through and be with me on the path. So if it's not an addiction thing, we need other men. Men need other men. We need the love of other men. We need connection with other men. And I'll go a step further and say, I don't think we can expect to show up our best in relationships with our women unless we have good, solid, intimate relationships with men. Because what happens is so many men, they don't talk to anybody but the woman they love, and that is too much for one person. That's not fair to expect that. And so often what we do is, we kind of coast through life, making decisions about jobs and things like based on what we think we're supposed to do rather than what we actually want. And we're unfulfilled. Then we try to compensate with that. Well, I'll find the right woman, you know, that's where, and there's this attitude that it's work. You're supposed to hate your job, which to me is no, you're not. No, you're not, and in fact, if you can't have a good, solid, full life, then how are you going to be a good husband? Right? Really? How are you really going to show up?
Mm.
You might show up as the guy who's got blinders on and is going to end up divorced in 10 years,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm. Wow.
and then
Wow.
blame it on whatever happened, right?
Mhm.
Instead of at the end of the day, you weren't really taking care of yourself and
Mhm.
really doing what you wanted to do with your life. So I guess, you know, we have all the answers. We have all the answers in here.
Mhm.
That's what I've learned is that all the questions, I already had all the answers. I just needed to be emotionally clear enough and focused enough to actually be able to listen to my intuition, which I believe is divine guidance.
Mm.
It's divinity within us,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
And my experience has been when I follow that,
Mhm.
everything else works out.
Wow, wow. Tom, let me tell you, man, you have really laid some powerful foundations. You've really given us a lot of nuggets here. I mean, we are so happy that you came and had this discussion here with us on XY Spark. And listen, for the men who are listening, I just want you to take note of some of the important things that Tom said, which is men need other men. We need to connect as men, healthy men, get good mentorship.
And
Okay.
one thing I want to say is this isn't something I read in a book.
Yes.
I say that I have a group of men.
Yes.
I mean, I know
Yeah.
because I've lived it. I am living it,
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much, Tom, for sharing
man.
yourself with us, man. This was powerful. And guys, listen, man. Tom, let me ask you, because we may have guys listening in. We have guys who listen to our podcast in Spain, in Canada, United States. What if one of these guys wanted to talk with you a bit more? How could they find you? Where would they find you?
Well, I have a podcast called The Path to Authenticity.
Mm,
So thepathtoauthenticity.com.
okay.
If it's someone who wants professional support, I can be found at tomgentry.net.
Mhm.
And, you and I met on Clubhouse. I have a presence on Clubhouse. And also, I'm on Instagram at The Path to Authenticity, Facebook too, but I don't use it as much. But yeah, between those,
Mhm. Mhm.
really the podcast for me is, I can work with one person and help one person. I can work with one family and help one family, or I can do group therapy, which I do. I can work with one group, or I can run a facility. But what the podcast enables me to do is reach more people. And that's why I'm doing it. And it's called The Path to Authenticity because I wanted to find a way to use the knowledge and experience and network that I've gained in my 25-year career of treating addiction for a broader audience and take those lessons. And so I arrived at the concept of authenticity, which we all can benefit from, And so it's really focused on having conversations with people who are at least trying to be authentic and trying to help the rest of us be more true to ourselves.
Yes.
That's what it's about. So yeah, thepathtoauthenticity.com. It's on
Thank
Apple everywhere. So,
Thank you. Thank you very
and
much,
have me
Tom.
back. We can talk more.
Absolutely, man. I'll bring you back, man. Listen, guys, I'm telling you, this is where it's at. You come, join us here on XY Spark. We have more amazing people like Tom. Tom wants to come back. We'll set up Tom to have a special interview with him and maybe somebody else for us to have a conversation together. Okay. But this is your boy Rolando again on XY Spark, where we continue to remind you that we believe that there is a spark in you. We'll see you again next time.